Paul said to ESPN, people keep telling me to fight someone my own size. Okay, how about I fight somebody who's bigger than me? His size makes him a tougher challenge than Crawford, because Crawford actually accepted it. He said, this is the most dangerous fight for me. Um, you know, here's the thing. The fight is official. It's taking place December 19th in Miami. My initial thoughts. Well, let me tell you this. In a official statement, Jake Paul said a professional heavyweight fight against an elite world champion in his prime. When I beat Anthony Joshua, every doubt disappears, and no one can deny me the opportunity to fight for a world title. To all my haters, this is what you wanted. To the people of the UK, I'm sorry. Um, here's the thing. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that by beating Anthony Joshua would immediately get Jake Paul a title shot, because he could already have a title shot. That's the sad truth. The WBA had him ranked in their top 15, I believe, in their top 12 actually. So he's technically eligible to fight for that one of their titles. But what does this fight mean? What does the Jake Paul Anthony Joshua fight mean? Well, I tell you something. What it means to me is, if it's a real fight. Now, I know that it's a sanctioned fight. I know, and I agree. Dax, I had sent you a link. I don't know if you checked your email. But Dax is saying a prime AJ. When was AJ's prime over? It's not. I mean, when you look at Anthony Joshua's record, he hasn't fought since September 21st of last year. He's been active. He will be active by the time he steps in a ring a month from now, 15 months. He's coming off his loss to Danny Dubois when he was stopped in the 5th round. Before that, he stepped into the ring with another guy who didn't have any boxing experience, and a lot of people thought Francis Ngannou was going to beat Anthony Joshua, and we all saw what happened. So here's my thoughts. Jake Paul, first and foremost, win, lose, or draw, I give Jake Paul a lot of credit. You got to give him a lot of credit. All right, I don't care what you think about him. Do I think that he is a legitimate fighter? No, I don't. I've been saying it for a long time. I don't. I think he's a master promoter, and this is just another example of why. Now, if Dax, I mean, I'm sorry, if AJ gets in that ring and he fights even to half of his ability, he destroys Jake Paul. I am not disputing the fact that it's going to be a sanctioned fight, because it will be. Florida is sanctioning the fight. It's going to be an 8-round fight. They're using official gloves for the heavyweight division, which are 10 ounce. Obviously 3-minute rounds. It's a real fight. It's a sanctioned fight. Okay. But here's the thing. Jake Paul, the way they're twisting this is they're saying, "Oh, Jake Paul's crazy. He's crazy." Anthony Joshua. First of all, Anthony Joshua fought Daniel Dubois the totally wrong way. As a matter of fact, when he was hurt, he should have did what he's supposed to do and try and hold on, slow it down, weather the storm. Instead, he went mano to mano. He went up trying to slug it out. You don't do that. Coach is saying the sanctioning. Yeah, it's being sanctioned by the state of Florida. There's no belt or anything on the line. It's being sanctioned by the state of Florida as a real fight. It's going to go down on the records as a real fight. Look, let me cut to the chase. My main fear about this fight is that it's not going to be legit. Okay. Yes, it's a sanctioned fight. Yes, it's a real fight on the books, but is it a real fight inside the ring? Is it predetermined? Is Anthony Joshua going through the same stuff? I actually saw things on social media that said, "Oh, well, Jake Paul has a better chance of winning against Anthony Joshua than he would have against Tank Davis. It's like, what's wrong? Tank Davis specifically said that this was a cash out fight for him. That he didn't care about what people thought, and he lost interest in the sport of boxing, et cetera, et cetera. And he was using his fight as a cash out fight. Now, the whole episode of what happened with Tank Davis, which canceled him, there was a lot of rumor that the ticket sales were very poor, and they were anticipating poor viewership because no one took the fight seriously because of the size difference, and there could have been a tactical move on both parts. You haven't heard anything from Tank Davis. I am going to ask my man, Discombobulating Jones, who's pretty good friends with Tank Davis, when he comes on a little bit later. But so next thing you know, Jake Paul is fighting Anthony Joshua. So here's the thing. If Jake Paul can survive 8 rounds and still loses, I don't care. He goes up in value in terms of a boxer. Who knows what he'll do after that? And listen, it's a win-win for Jake Paul. Because if Jake Paul loses this fight, which I anticipate him to do, if this is a real fight, let me tell you something. If Anthony Joshua gets in that ring and pussyfoots around and just paws his jab and does all of these things to not try to win this fight, all right, I'll be so pissed, because the truth of the matter is that if he steps in this ring, even trying a little bit, he should destroy Jake Paul. Now, as far as Jake Paul's concerned, like I just said, it's a win-win situation for him, because whether he wins, whether he loses, whether he draws, whether he gets knocked out, whether he goes the distance, whether any of that stuff happens, the truth of the matter is his value goes up because he's doing this. Listen, how many fighters today, even in the heavyweight division, would want to fight Anthony Joshua? I mean, how many? This guy Ituma, Moses Ituma, would he fight Anthony Joshua? He wouldn't even fight Frank Sanchez, and he's getting a fast track, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. He's getting a fast track to a world title shot. Why is that? I don't understand. And he's getting the recognition. Jake Paul deserves some credit here. Not only does he deserve credit for stepping in the ring with Anthony Joshua, but he deserves credit as a really good promoter. He's got me interested in going and sitting ringside to watch this fight. And I'm sure that the rest of the card is going to be good. I haven't heard anything about the card. I'm assuming it's going to be the same card that was supposed to take place, but you never know. It's going to be taking place at the Kaseya Center in Miami, where the NBA's Heat plays. It's going to be set up for boxing, where it can seat about 20,000 people. So we'll see what happens with that fight, and we'll continue to give you some thoughts on that as the show progresses here. I tell you, Coach is saying, give him credit, the same as Vince McMahon talking about promotion. But I tell you, I'll go a step further than that. I haven't seen a promoter promote fights and get the response as well as Jake Paul has been doing since Don King. Name another promoter that has done this and made some good fights. Not that his fight against Tyson was a good fight, but he's got people watching. 41 million people watched the Tyson Jake Paul fight. They're estimating over 100 million to be tuned in to watch the Jake Paul Anthony Joshua fight. As far as Anthony Joshua is concerned, he says, I'm going to destroy this guy. He better. And if he tries, even if he's in marginal shape, um, you know, he's he's going to be a guy that should be able to take care of Jake Paul pretty easily. But anyway, um, I was uh, I was waiting. I thought Dax was going to pop in, but he's back in the chat room. Um, I did see him for a second. Didn't get a chance to get him on, but some other news that I wanted to talk about. I'll jump here. Usyk vacated his WBO belt, so now he's not the undisputed world heavyweight champion, and they upgraded Fabio Wardley to be the now the WBO regular champion because he was the interim champion. You know, this is my problem with the sport of boxing. Um, you know, I don't like the fact that I didn't think that Wardley should have even gotten that fight against Parker to begin with. I didn't agree with the fact that he was going to get a fast track to Usyk. Now they award him the title. I don't know. Maybe he fights the winner of Jake Paul and Anthony Joshua. I don't know. But joining us right now, my man Dax Khan, Anthony Joshua against Jake Paul. Dude, what's your thoughts?
It's, you know what? I think you said it. You got to give Jake Paul credit. He is silencing his critics, and he is willing to do what a lot of professionals aren't willing to do. And I brought this up continuously during the original World Boston Super Series, where it was anybody who was ranked could enter so long as they earn their position, which is how Chris Eubank got in when he fought, I believe it was Arthur Abraham. But my point is that Jake Paul wants to show, win, lose, or draw, he is legit. Now, a journeyman is legit. A guy who is just a paid opponent is legit if they step in that ring and they do their job. But Jake Paul does not want to be looked at as a joke. And Anthony Joshua is the only guy right now that is willing to go in there. He knows where his position is inside the sport. Right now, Anthony Joshua has almost no credibility since the Dubois KO. His last 4 or 5 fights have not really gone his way, even the ones that he's won. So, yeah, you know something? Him going in there against Anthony Joshua and then dropping back down to cruiserweight where he really belongs, I believe Jake Paul, especially with what some of the other fighters who work around him have said, actually might do something that nobody ever thought of, and that's become a legitimate top 10 fighter.
Listen, I hope, I've said about Jake Paul, he works so hard, and I hope that he does become a legitimate fighter, so to speak. But he's jumping pretty high. I mean, he's going from fighting 58-year-old Mike Tyson to Anthony Joshua. You could say what you want about Anthony Joshua, but when he's on, he's a tough out. His weakness, yeah, he's got a suspect chin. He didn't fight the right fight against Dubois. But we're not talking about Dubois. We're not talking about his last, half a dozen to a dozen. His last 10 opponents, all better than Jake Paul. I give Jake Paul credit for stepping in the ring, Dax.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I'm not saying that Anthony Joshua is totally finished. He's done. He's, way washed up, or however you want to word it. My point of the matter is that he is going in there against a guy that is legitimate. And if he goes in there and let's just say, forget a knockout, let's say it goes a distance and he actually outboxes Anthony Joshua legitimately, not by what the judges say, but by what the fans see. What imagine, what there will be a complaint. Somehow there will be a complaint by fans. Fans have a tendency to complain about anything, Bill. You know this. They complained about Beater Beeb and Bivol.
No, I know. Hey, listen, Dax, joining us right now. I got Coach Dave popping in. And I'll tell you something, Dax, just to finish that. If he goes the distance, he doesn't even have to win the fight. If he goes the distance with Anthony Joshua, I give him credit. Dave, what's your thoughts, man, on this Anthony Joshua Jake Paul announcement? You got some stuff going, music in the
What's up,
background.
guys? I hope you can hear me a little bit.
Yeah, we hear it. We hear it all.
What's that?
We hear it all. We hear,
All right. Hey, you're very astute today, Billy.
yeah, yeah. What's your thoughts on the initial thoughts here on the Jake Paul Anthony Joshua fight?
Well, you heard about a little inside info here that Joshua was supposed to fight Cassius Chaney.
I had not heard that.
So I had conversation with Cassius after it had come out that there was rumor that he was supposed to be fighting Anthony Joshua, and once Joshua took the fight with Jake Paul, that fell out. Unfortunate for Cassius, would have been a great fight for him, and obviously he would have made some money, right? And maybe won. I'm not a big fan of this fight, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's just kind of giving me the WWE effect of boxing, that it's it's all for show, and there's really no meaning in this fight whatsoever. Like,
Well, the meaning I see is, like what Dax just said before, that it's more of a recognition for Jake Paul, and I had heard and saw some um a statement by Eddie Hearn, and Eddie Hearn said that Anthony Joshua was trying to get a fight, and he said you're not going to even hear about it because it's going to be against a not a non recognizable opponent unless it was Jake Paul. Did you see that, Dax?
I believe, yeah. I've heard those same rumors because more or less Anthony Joshua and the Deontay Wilder era ended at the same time, more or less. Anthony Joshua was maybe a little bit sooner because of the earlier loss to Andy Ruiz Jr. And the two of them, and I spoke about this on the show a lot of times, and you looked at me like I was crazy. We argued. And I said, Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder are just sitting there. They're fighting the same old recycled opponents and guys that aren't even really top 10. So, yeah, Anthony Joshua has lost his marketability with a lot of fans, not so much due to that, but due to the fact that it was always highly publicized how much money he was making against these opponents.
Well, that's another thing that surprises me, Coach, is that this can't be just a money grab for Anthony Joshua because he's been very successful in the ring. Rumor has it that he's made well over $150 million, for himself after he pays everybody else, since he's been fighting. I mean, I don't know what he's getting paid for this. Have any of you guys heard numbers?
In terms of numbers, I do not know. Most likely, I'm going to guess that Anthony Joshua is going to have one set figure. Since it's not a pay per view, obviously, he's not going to get what he usually does, which is a portion of the pay per views. And I also think that more or less Eddie Hearn is dictating what Joshua is going to get because I have a feeling this may be a cash out fight for Joshua, just like it was supposed to be for Gervonta Davis.
That could be, Dave. What do you think about that? Joshua looking at this as a cash out.
yeah, I'm losing you there a little bit, Billy,
Yeah, I think we are. We're our connection isn't that great.
on the sound
Um,
here.
yeah, yeah, but maybe retry it. But in any event, I'm not sure, Dax, if it's a cash out or not. I don't think that Anthony Joshua gets anything out of this other than cash, because if he beats him, which we all are assuming, um, what kind of recognition? Who's going to pat him on the back for beating Jake? It's a win-win for Jake Paul, Dax.
Look, I said this years, and yes, it is a win-win for Jake Paul, no matter what. I said years ago when you were really high on Anthony Joshua, and the big debate was who was actually better, Anthony Joshua or Deontay Wilder, when both were undefeated. And my question was at that time, and was up until even after the first Andy Ruiz Jr. fight, I reserved it until he faced Usyk. Is Anthony Joshua the UK's Frank Bruno, or he's the UK's Lennox Lewis? And he 100% is the UK's Frank Bruno, except the UK doesn't love him like they love Frank Bruno.
Yeah. That second fight, the second fight that they were in, the Usyk fight with Anthony Joshua, I thought that Joshua could have pulled that one out. I thought he might have won that. Let me try and get Coach Dave back on here. I still have your other. You must have logged into another place because.
Oh, it refreshed on me. Yeah, I
not you. I'm talking about Coach Dave. You got to unmute yourself, Dave.
How's that?
There you go. Yeah, that's sounds a little better, and you got a nice. You're in a different room. You're in an orange room now.
Yeah, I'm moving around here.
Yeah. Oh, you got me in the mood for a Dunkin' Donuts coffee. With the.
Yeah, I figured I'd get you going a little bit, right, Billy?
So, what do you think? This is a cash out for AJ, or do you think what's your thoughts?
Okay, I'll put it to both you guys right now. What's the end game here by AJ fighting Anthony Joshua? Jake Paul. So there's no ranking, there's no anything but monetary fulfillment here. I mean, you're a high level heavyweight that you are being called out by other heavyweights in the division right now, and you're going to take a fight with Jake Paul that has no meaning in the boxing world other than, I don't know if you heard me earlier, it's the wrestling effect. We're going to bring in the special guests to fight this guy, and we're going to sell tickets and be Barnum and Bailey. So I have no interest in this, Billy. I think I give it to Jake Paul for stepping up, but on Anthony Joshua, you're in a tough situation because this is all win-win for Jake Paul, like I heard you say previously.
Yeah, the bottom line is that this is all really for Jake Paul. The WWE effect, Daxx. I personally think that, and what scares me is that I think that this might be the beginning of what boxing is going to become, because you look at it this way: look at the numbers, the sets of eyes that are going to be on this fight. These fans, and I was in a conversation on social media today, these fans that keep paying for this and keep buying this and keep, talking about it and everything, this is what they think is normal. And if they accept it and they keep forking over the coin, damn well, both you guys know damn well that boxing will definitely keep giving it to you because all they want is the cash, and that's my biggest fear. What do you think first, Daxx?
Well, I mentioned that a couple weeks ago. I think when Harvey Doc was on, that you have to blame the fans. They're the ones that keep watching it. So if the fans are accepting it, then yes, that's what boxing is going to become. On the other hand, in terms of what Coach Dave said, yes, Anthony Joshua is elite, but just like Gervonta Davis, who was going to be the original opponent, and a lot of people have said it, Gervonta isn't hungry anymore. He has the money. He doesn't need the nonsense. He doesn't need the politics. He doesn't need to go and worry about what's next for him. And the same thing for Anthony Joshua. He does not need the money. He has already suffered several embarrassing losses, and he knows that in this fight, even if he wins, comes out there, first round knockout, the very first punch, sets the fastest record for a knockout of any heavyweight title fight in history. It is always going to loom over him the same way that the Conor McGregor fight has loomed over Floyd Mayweather Jr. The only people that are going to not hold it against him are going to be the ones that are the diehard fans, except the UK, Billy, as you state all the time, and the United States fans are different in their mindset. The UK fans will not let AJ live that down.
Well, hey, Coach, do you think that that's the case, that he has lost his interest in the sport and this is a cash out for him? I mean, it could very well be.
It might be, but let me play devil's advocate here. Do we think that he's made enough money in his career already to be comfortable with previous fights? And I agree. Like, you know, he comes out and wins in the first round. It's expected. There's no big deal here. There's no anything as far as what he should be doing. Cash out, I think definitely. At the end of the year, let's put it to you two guys, Dak and Billy. Would you turn away that money in December at the end of a fiscal year if it was presented to you an opportunity?
No,
No, of course
no,
not.
you
You
can't.
know,
You
but
can't. You can't blame him for the money. But
no,
what bothers me is guys like Moses Aituma, who said he thinks he's backing Jake Paul in this fight. He doesn't think he's going to win. He said, and I quote, "The money that gets thrown around, people like that can step in the ring with a two-time heavyweight champion." He's talking about Paul. It's got a bragging power in it. Listen, I don't hate on anybody that's trying to do well. Jake Paul has smashed life, conquered YouTube. Now he's trying to conquer boxing, although I don't think it's going to be as easy as he thinks. Fair play to him. I'm going to be behind him all the way because I like to see a man strive for success. Although I don't want to see him beat Anthony Joshua, I am going to be behind him for this success story. Now, my question is, what's he actually saying? Does he want to fight Anthony Joshua? I think Moses Aituma is trying to take the easiest path. He would have taken the fight against Jake Paul if it was offered.
you know what? And to answer that question right now, who wouldn't take the fight? Especially a guy like Atuma, who's coming up through the ranks, trying to make a name for himself. It'll be the biggest payday of his career if he took this fight. All eyes of the world of Jake Paul has Netflix, so even the hardcore boxing people are going to be watching, but even the everyday viewer is also going to be watching. Anybody with Netflix on their platform is going to be able to tune in. So, I to your question earlier, Billy, and your statement rather, I really hope this isn't the way of boxing going forward. This is just who's next. Okay, so if it's Joshua, if it's Atuma, whoever it is that fights Jake Paul, who's next in line saying, are we going to see Tyson Fury? Are we going to see? I don't know. I get the idea, but I just think for the hardcore boxing people, it's not a good route for the future.
No, it's not. And Dax, you're in the gym with young fighters all the time, and this is one of my big hangups. And Coach and I have talked about this off air before. But these guys work so hard and they don't get the opportunity. You get somebody that's got money behind him, and I'm going to use Ituma again as an example. He hasn't fought anybody. He's fought one fight that people are wondering how it even happened, and the WBO has already said he's getting a fast track to a world title shot. So is it really fair to these young fighters who don't have the money behind them, and they're trying to work their way up? And then now boxing could be taking this crazy turn that it's like WWE. I mean, like Coach K says in the chat room, he goes, and now Anthony Joshua just hit Jake Paul with a chair. I mean, is that what we're going to see?
I
Is
mean,
is somebody going to come jumping out of the audience and tag team him or something? What's going to happen?
we're going to have an issue in the sport sooner than later. Alexander Usyk has expressed his intentions, and he has hinted at his intentions on retirement. Alexander Usyk, Bill, I've been saying this for 9 years of the however many forevers I've been on the show. And we do know he is legit. He has solidified his place in history, and it cannot be taken away from him. He's done things that no other champion has done before him. He has hinted on talking about Jake Paul in the cage, meaning MMA. Now, so yeah, there you go. There is just a whole nother thing where the direction of the sport can be going, considering Dana White is also now involved with promoting boxing. So yes, this sport is going into a big change. Plus, all the top heavyweights that we consider, in the top 10, whether or not we want to go to Zhilei Zhang, Joe Joyce, the issue he just had with the dirty test, Daniel Dubois, who knows where his mindset is, Anthony Joshua. I was just researching before, because I thought he had made a little more money than what he has. But remember, for the Ngannou fight, he got $6 million for that fight. He got $6 million for the rematch with Ruiz. He got $25 million for the fight against Klitschko, plus pay-per-view rights. Yes, he has made plenty of money inside the sport. So this whole sport is going to go in all kinds of different directions. I see it. I see this becoming a kind of like the pro-am shows that you see, where you got 4 amateur boxing bouts and then 1 pro MMA bout, or vice versa. And that's the way the sport is going to be. And something, the fans are allowing it.
I agree with that. And coach, that's what Dax just said is pretty disheartening, because for guys like all three of us that, I definitely consider myself a boxing purist. Dax doesn't do anything but watch boxing, and Dave, I know you're the same. It's disheartening to even fathom that we could be talking about what everyone's going to be labeling as the sport of boxing in 5 years from now, and it's going to be a shell of itself, what we're used to. We've Dax has been involved with this show for quite some time, and we've talked about many times. I wouldn't even be able to put a number on how many times we discussed how we can get boxing back to the way it was, back to the way it was, back to the way it was. It's totally going in a different direction, Dave.
I agree. And now, if this is the way to go, like what Dax is saying, what happens? Nobody wants to see a young and up and coming fighter. These guys don't get shots anymore. So that means if you put your grind in as a young, early ranked fighter, 10, 15, maybe 20 fights, you're going to be overlooked. It's going to be hard for you to crack that top 3 or top 2, because you know they're pulling people out. Like, who's next? What's the next um, you know event? Who's going to sell it out? And once Usyk's gone, to your point, Dak, these other combat sport venues are starting to attract other fighters, meaning boxers. So, you have bare knuckle. They're pulling celebrity athletes, former football players, former boxers. Like, look, I was on a bare knuckle event last year in Philadelphia. Joey Dwanko was on the card. You just had Paulie Malignaggi fight in Europe. So, the lure of money is drawing these guys, and especially, you know, Joshua's made money in his career, like you said, Dax, and he's had great sponsorship with Under Armour and other companies that have paid him well. But what about these guys that are coming up? The lure of the money that they may never see in this sport. I get that part, but from the boxing end, I'm not liking what I see.
But the
No,
problem is over promoting. I didn't mean to speak over you, but the problem is over promoting. Either we're not getting promoted enough, meaning fighters on their way up and being brought up the right way, or they're being over promoted. And Floyd Mayweather Jr., that's one thing I have to give him credit for, and he stated it several times. You cannot start your career and think by your 10th fight, your 11th fight, that you're getting paid 10, 20, 30 million dollars. You have to earn this. You have to market yourself. Your promoter has to market yourself. That's when you know that you've arrived and you become a fighter.
Well,
You
here's the
become
problem.
elite.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Promoters aren't promoting anymore. Managers aren't managing. Fighters aren't getting a chance. Even the ranking system with these sanctioning bodies are a joke. I mean, the same thing. I'm going to mention Ituma again. How does he get a fast track? There's so many other fighters that have been fighting, but and the magic thing to do now is just keep winning. It doesn't matter who you're fighting against, just win and you'll get in, and that's not right. It's going to deter young fighters from wanting to get involved in this sport. There's nothing. And you guys were both talking about, what's the problem? The main problem is it's very hard for a small promoter, a local promoter, to put on shows where he can make a couple of bucks and pay the fighters and develop young talent that can go from city to city, state to state, whatever, create rivalries and start their climb like that. That's what's missing. There's only a handful of grassroots promoters left because most can't afford to do it. So where are these guys fighting? They're all fighting in, Oshkosh, some country somewhere where they can get the fight that they want. And next thing you know, we're hearing about them when they're 20-0, and now they're over here, and because they got to know, everybody thinks they're great.
Well, you know what, Billy? That's a great point. I'm just going to jump in here real quick, and you kind of beat me to the punch there. And I know you've been around on every aspect of it, from promoting to managing. But yeah, years ago, promotional companies, boxing went city to city. Okay, they brought a prospect up and they drew a fan base. Might have been fighting in New York one week, then you were fighting in Florida, Oklahoma, and I'll give you, and you'll remember this name, Billy. Joe Messi was built like that on ESPN. He was taken and brought up as a fighter that, nothing to take away from Joe. Joe was a decent fighter. He wasn't a top tier fighter, like in some of these heavyweights, but they built him up. He fought some tough fights and he got a fan base. People wanted to see Joe Messi when he got on HBO. Today, I know the internet and everything else is out there, but there is no building of a fan base of these young fighters that, when they start out early in their careers and they climb the ladders.
Let me tell you, I knew Joe Messi personally. He was a friend of mine. I wrote an article about him when ESPN the Mag first came out, and I'll tell you a quick story. I went and spent 3 days with them up in Buffalo, and I got to know him and his trainer, his what they did. He was training out of college, all these things, and we ended up one of the nights. His father, who was his manager, took me to a Buffalo Sabres game, and I'll never
Right.
forget this. All right, and I went in. We were in a booth. We were in a luxury box, and I'm sitting in there with Joe Messi, right, and one of my favorite football players of all time, Jim Kelly of the Buffalo Bills, is sitting on one side, and Steve Tasker is sitting on the other side.
Yeah.
And all the fans pounded on the door to get autographs, wanted it from Joe Messi. And I was shocked that they weren't looking for, so you're 100% correct. And it wasn't just city to city, state to state. When boxing was in its heyday in the 40s and the 50s, it was town against town. You'd have a kid that was fighting out of one town, would go over across the railroad tracks and fight somebody else, and they'd sell it out with those smokers. That was when boxing was where it's at. Unfortunately, it's taken a different turn, fellas.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, and I have, again, that's something else that we argued about on this show before.
You're making it sound like all we did was argue on this show. Come on.
No, is that we needed some sort of UFC style setup, except the fighters needed to be paid better than what the UFC fighters get paid, because we know what Dana White has done to all his top stars.
Yeah,
That's why they need so many sponsors.
But
then came the WBSS.
Yeah, but
World Boxing
Dax,
Super
hold on
Series.
a minute. Hold on. I just want to interrupt you for 1 second because a lot of people forget this part about the UFC. The UFC, yes, they pay their guys based on their experience, how many rounds, blah 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 blah. How many rounds of experience. But the other thing that never gets mentioned is that they also get a piece of all the merchandising. They get a piece of the pay-per-view. It's a franchise. So these guys are getting that kind of revenue streams. I don't know what the numbers are, but they get that. Something they do not get in boxing unless they get part of the pay-per-view deals.
The UFC fighters don't all get paid like that. That's why they have so many sponsors. That's why those big banners are behind there. Ask all the top names. Ask George St. Pierre. You can go to Matt Hughes. There's a ton of guys who can tell you, the guys that actually built that company, that will tell you exactly how much money that they didn't get. Guys that still to this day, because of their performances in the ring, still are part of that merchandising that you express.
That they still get a piece, even though they're not fighting anymore.
No, they don't get nothing out of it.
Well,
But because they built that company. Now, as far as what Coach Dave said, in terms of building and promoting and guys going around, I remember back in 1997 getting a phone call in the middle of the day at a gym in Schenectady from Cedric Kirshner. He had a fight card that he was putting on at what was then the Pepsi Arena. He had some guys that he was putting on, that he was trying to build up. He didn't think there was going to be a large crowd. And there was some guys that at one point in time were top tier fighters, yet he needed them to be on the undercard to hopefully attract more names. Now on that card, you had Joe Messi was on that card. I think Joe maybe had 2 or 3 fights at the time. Robert Daniels, former cruiserweight champion. Hasim Rahman fought Tui Tua. Tui Tua came and took that fight because he needed money to buy Christmas gifts for his kids. So he took that money and took that beating from Hasim Rahman. It was only like one punch, believe me. And then you had Gerald Nobles, who fought, I think it was Gregory Pickham. And there was almost nobody in there. You could probably count how many people were in there on 2 hands. But you know what? Those guys went out there and did their job and did what they had to do. And Cedric Kushner took care of them. It was in the middle of the winter. It was not a fight night, but these guys went out there and they learned their craft and they helped build themselves. And that's what we need from promoters. That's what we don't have. The UFC part is, it's mandatory that you have to fight guys of a certain level. There's no picking, there's no choosing, there's no clauses. And the WBSS, the great part about that is every sanctioning body agreed to allow their titles to be put up there. Doesn't matter who was the mandatory. If you were a champion and you were in that tournament, that title stayed inside that tournament until it was over. And then number one would have to deal with the champion after that tournament was over. And look what it unified. We brought Alexander Usyk. We brought Naoya Inoue. We can go on and on and on at all the guys that came out of that tournament. Even if they didn't win, they came out of there as top names. That's the setup we need in boxing.
No, there's no doubt. We definitely need something.
Can I throw one thing in here, Billy, with just to add to one thing with Daxx? And I think he had a great idea with what he's talking about in the UFC. One thing I like what the UFC does is they have the Contenders series. Now that's televised on Tuesday nights, usually through the summer. They give you an opportunity. Now, you don't get to pick who you're going to fight. They call you up. They say, hey, Daxx, you're going to fight Billy. That's it. It's next Tuesday. You in, you out, right? We need something like that in boxing. We need something like that in boxing, in my opinion, right? It'll show people off, right?
We had it. Remember, it was called Boxino.
Yeah,
ESPN did it.
we had a lot of different things like
Yeah.
that, but we're losing that now.
Oh yeah, nobody wants to fight anybody though, Dave.
I agree.
That's the
But
thing.
you know what? There's guys with under 10 wins. Look,
They
quick,
the original Contender series.
I
It
agree.
was-
Talk about
exactly.
that, the Contender series with Stallone and Sugar Ray.
Yep.
Remember, we got some champions out of there and some really popular guys. The
Yeah.
Latin Snake is
Yeah,
still one of the
Sergio
most
Mora.
popular guys in the sport.
Yeah.
We got, and then nothing for nothing. we just had the WBC Grand Prix tournament, which is going to finish up, right? I was fortunate to have a fighter in there. Look, you fought. You went into the tournament. There was the criteria. You fought. You won. You kept going. You won. You kept going. You won. You kept going. Um, no press on that in the States. Little bit. Hardcore boxing people know about it, but really no press. And a lot of those guys, a lot of international guys, we didn't have too many USA guys in there. Um, Fortunately, we had Amon Lee, who I work with, who went to the quarterfinals. Um, but, you're fighting. He fought three highly ranked fighters in the world. And, you know, that's the quality of boxing that we need. Stuff like that to see fighters that are not only in the United States, but we're global now. So
We
a
got
lot of great
hey,
talent.
there's a great example of a good fight that's happening this weekend that I'm going to break down a little bit later, where it has two guys on the up and up, and that's the Sam Noakes and Abdullah Mason fight that's
Yeah,
on the undercard of now those are two guys that are, both kind of ranked in the top 10, top 12. I know they're higher in certain sanctioning
right.
bodies, but legit rankings, and they're fighting each other. And that's what we need, more of that. We
I
need
like
more of
that.
that.
I like that fight.
Yeah,
It's a
no, I
great
love
fight.
the fight. I actually like all the fights on that card. I think they're all going to be good. But anyway, hey, listen, fellas, I gotta go. I got discombobulating Jones ready to come on here in a couple minutes, but we're going to be talking a lot more about this fight, I'm sure, over the next couple of weeks. I just don't know if my opinion's going to change. I mean, real quick, Dax, what would have to change for you to look at this fight more as a legit fight than a circus?
What would have to change is right now, there's no way to change that due to everything that has led up to this. But what would really change is if after this fight, win, lose, or draw, Jake Paul follows through with the promises that you hear him say on the zone promos all the time, that he is not going to stop until he becomes a world champion. And then there's some sort of comment where I have myself a little bit of sprint here. I think, if he does do that, and all these other previous ones have just been his way of getting more or less used to the environment, then you know what? That is going to change boxing as a whole, because that means just like in the old days where you fought whoever was either on their way down or guys who were not that good to get that experience, and you got better as you went up the ladder. If Jake Paul does that, then you know what? I think boxing may actually just go the opposite way from what we're thinking and become better.
What's your thoughts? What would have to change, Coach?
I like what Dax said, but I would go like this. Look, I want to see a sanctioning body come in and put a mandatory in front of Jake Paul and not him cherry pick an opponent or get in with his promotional company waving money around for a payday. And then I want to see him fight some hungry fighters that are going to go in there and look to knock him off. And I think that will give not only some of the fans credibility, but we'll be able to see of how vested is he in this sport when it's a little bit out of his control, and he's got to fight who they put in front of him.
Yep. Guys, I appreciate it, and we'll revisit this next week. All right.
All
All
right.
right,
Talk to
guys.
you then. Have a
All
good
right,
one.
man. Take
Have
her
a
easy.
great night, guys.
You
Bye.
too.
You know,